Good morning, everybody. Today we're talking about one of my favorite characters in the entire game, the Sorcerer. Now, the Sorcerer and the Wizard are very similar. They actually do cast the same spells, but they cast them in a very different way. So I'm going to be doing my best to walk you through so you can understand why I love the Sorcerer so much. So to get started is the stats. Now, Wizards use Intelligence as their main stat, but Sorcerers do not. Sorcerers are charisma-based spellcasters, and that's because basically the way that Wizards learn spells is they study books, they learn real good, and they learn how to do magic. Sorcerers, on the other hand, tap into magic that's already inside their body. They're the main character of this movie, so they just learn how to do magic anyway, even though they don't really try that hard, and they end up being able to cast their spells. So they are charisma-based spellcasters. Therefore, increasing your charisma is going to increase the amount of spell points you have, as well as how difficult it is for enemies to resist your spells. Outside of that, you want some Constitution because dying is bad and Constitution gives you health. A little bit of Intelligence just for some skill points, just for convenience sake. And then the Strength is just for carrying equipment because sometimes if you get overloaded, it can be annoying, especially in the early game. Now, this character is a Dragonborn. When it comes to your race, all the Sorcerers are good, so it doesn't really matter which race you decide to play. Minus charisma races are pretty bad, so like Dwarf is not the best Sorcerer you can do. Similarly, Warforged, while there are some good things you can do with Warforged, like the fact that Arcane users get the repair spells, so you could heal yourself as a Warforged Sorcerer, you do take a minus on charisma. So my recommendation is to stick to the plus charisma races like Drow or Tiefling or Dragonborn, but in this case, I'm recommending Dragonborn. And we're going to talk about why in a little bit. Now let's start our journey here with the skill panel. Now, skills, as a sorcerer, you don't really need that many. Spellcraft is going to increase the damage of your spell by 1% for every point you have here. So now that I have 11 spellcraft, I get 11% more spell damage. Tumble will allow me to stay safe. Tumbling is a great way to protect yourself in and out of combat, and especially as a caster, you want to be able to get away from enemies, so tumble is very important. And then lastly, use Magic Device. This will allow you to use all sorts of different healing items while leveling, as sorcerers can't heal themselves normally, so you'll have to either rely on potions, or you can go ahead and get yourself a hireling, or in this case, because you actually have used Magic Device, you can use this to get access to different types of wands or scrolls to keep yourself alive. The rest of the skills, in my opinion, don't really matter, so you don't have to worry about them. These are kind of the only three I would recommend. And if you did have to drop one, let's say you decided you didn't want to have as much intelligence, or you wanted to play a minus into race for some reason, then you could just drop spellcraft, as the amount of damage you get is very, very minor, and the tumble and the use magic device are too important to skip past. As far as how the feats go on a sorcerer, we're going to talk about one of the most important feats that you can get, which are the meta magic feats. And this is something that you're going to take on basically every single caster. And what these do is these modulate the power of your spells. So we get Quicken Spell, Maximize Spell, and Empower Spell. What these do is when they're turned on, they increase the cost of all of the spells that you cast by a certain amount. So let's say Maximize increases the cost by 25 spell points, but it makes it so that spell now deals 100 more damage as if you had 150 extra spell power of that type, or 150% more damage. So if I had a 20 damage spell and I turn on Maximize, my spell now deals 50 damage, which is a huge increase. So sometimes it's not always worth it to cast with these on, but these meta magic feats are kind of the bread and butter of a lot of casters, and we're going to go into how to use them in just a little bit. Outside of that, the next step of feat you're going to be taking is the spell casting feat. There's a lot of different ways to play Sorcerer, but 99.9% of them are offensive casters. Sorcerer is primarily an offensive caster class, so you're going to want to be taking either Evocation Focus, if you want to focus on any of the normal elements, or if you're an Acid user, you take Conjuration Focus, as that's your spell focus. And then outside of that, you might take a defensive feat here and there to keep yourself propped up, but for the most part, we're talking about the meta magic feats. Now, one of the things about Sorcerer that makes them unique is their spell casting speed. So, not only do Sorcerers get more spell points than Wizards, as if a Wizard of this level would have like 400 and I have 600, Sorcerers get way more spell points, but also they cast spells twice as fast. For example, if I take this jump spell out and I cast it, whoosh, it's very, very quick. Sorcerers actually have double cast speed, as if all of their spells are already quickened, as the Quicken Spell meta magic feat allows you to cast spells at double their speed. However, you can quicken spells on a Sorcerer, getting even faster cast speed, making your spells nearly instantaneous. Some people think Quicken is unnecessary on a Sorcerer because you're already casting your spells fast enough, but I say, why don't we just go even faster and then go even faster? On top of that, sorcerers also have shorter cooldown times on their spells. Each spell, you can read the description here. It'll tell you its cooldown, its target, its saving throw, its spell cost. Sorcerer cooldowns are just shorter than wizard cooldowns. So for example, Burning Hands has a 1 second cooldown here, whereas for a wizard, it is, I believe, a 3 second cooldown. Similarly with Fireball, it's a 2 second cooldown here, whereas I believe for wizard, it's a 3 or a 4 second cooldown. So your spells have a shorter cooldown on sorcerer, which means you can whip them out all the more frequently. Now let's take a minute to break down the anatomy of a spell. So if I pick a basic spell, Burning Hands here, it has a cooldown of 1 second. It has a saving throw of 17. That save is how difficult it is for an enemy to resist the effect. If an enemy resists your spell, it's going to change based on the description of the spell. So in this case, if they make their reflex save, they take half damage. So you want to be able to increase that number as much as you can, and the saving throw is based on your charisma, which you can find here, as well as any bonuses to evocation, which you can get either from your enhancement tree or you can pick up from items, which is very helpful. You can also tell what school you need for your saving throw. It says saving throw evocation. I mentioned that with this spell, it's an evocation spell. You might have schools that are enchantment or conjuration, although for this character, almost every single thing you have is going to be evocation. And we have the caster level, and this is one of the things that separates wizards from sorcerers, is that sorcerers can easily manipulate the caster level of their spells. The caster level is basically the power that you cast it at. In modern Dungeons & Dragons, if you've played 5th edition, spells just do the effect of their spell. But in older Dungeons & Dragons, the spell was more powerful if the spellcaster was more powerful, which is to say a level 1 spell has an effect at level 1, but if you're level 5 when you cast it, it does more damage. It's basically a way for all of the spells to just kind of scale a little bit. So Burning Hands here, it says caster level 11, although it's capped at 5. Because it's a level 1 spell, spells have caster level caps. They can only get so powerful. So even though my caster level is 11, it'll only give me the damage as though I was caster level 5. So you want to get more caster levels, and you want to get higher level spells like Scorch, which is minus at 10, and it says maximum 10, and then Fireball, which is at 10, maximum 10. The way you manipulate your caster levels is with your enhancement trees. So for example, I have the Fire Savant tree here. And for being a Fire Savant, I get bonuses with fire-specific spells, which again, wizards can't really do. So that's one of the reasons why we do this. Then going on to the rest of the anatomy of it, you can see which meta magics it's going to take, what are the components, as well as the actual individual damage of the spell. Something you'll notice is that lower level spells don't do as much damage as higher level spells. So not only does Burning Hands do it cap at level 5, but as opposed to level 10, like Scorch does, but also it does a d6 plus 1, whereas a Scorch says it does a d6 plus 2. So Scorch just does more damage and can get to a higher level than Burning Hands does. And as you get higher level, generally the higher level of a spell, it'll do more damage and it can get to a higher max cap, which means you can get even more damage as you get higher levels. So you always want to be casting the higher level spells. As far as which spells you should pick, because sorcerers don't get access to all of the spells, you have to pick them on level up. In this build guide that I have for you, I have all of the spells kind of laid out. It starts with just picking up damage spells, then utility. So it's damage, then utility, damage, then utility, damage, and then there'll be more utility spells for pretty much every single level that you want to go up. Now, one of the things about your spells is you can modulate them with your meta magic feats. So as an example, let's say I'm going to take something simple. We're going to get Burning Hands here, right? So of Burning Hands costs 4 spell points, as I was talking about. I can take the Quicken spell meta magic feat, making it cast at twice the speed if I turn it on. Now it costs 14, but it casts twice as fast, which is pretty expensive and maybe isn't something you want to do all the time. When I have 6,000 spell points, 14 won't seem like a lot, but right now 14 is a pretty big chunk out of my 600, especially considering 14 makes it cost more than fire, or almost as much as Fireball, because Fireball is a base 15, but it doesn't even do half of the damage of a Fireball, so I'd rather just cast a Fireball. However, there is a way around this, and that is from spell-like abilities. Spell-like abilities, which you get out of your enhancement tree, and you find under enhancements here, are like spells in that they have spell effects, but if I turn on this meta magic feat, this spell, Burning Hands, goes up to 14, but the spell-like ability doesn't. It stays at 2, meaning you can apply all of your meta magic feats to them. And so your character will have lots of spell-like abilities built into it through the build guide that I've put together, and you will generally want to use these first. You cast all your spell-like abilities, and then when they're on cooldown, that's when you want to use your real spells. And that's the general bread and butter of leveling on a caster. You get your mana magic feats, you juice up your spell-like abilities, and you use that to carry the day. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about the enhancement trees on a sorcerer because they're really, really important, as sorcerers basically only have 2 enhancement trees. They have their savant enhancement trees, which are pretty much entirely the same. If you look next to each other, the fire savant and the air savant tree, they have almost the same stuff in the same places. So they're basically identical. The difference is anything that says fire and fire savant, like fire savant gives fire spell power and fire caster levels, air savant gives electric spell power and electric caster levels. So that's one of the main differences there. You can take 2 of these at a time, so you can take Fire Savant and Air Savant, so you can kind of be dual elemental on every single sorcerer that you play. However, you can't take opposite elements. If I'm fire, I can't take water. If I'm air, I can't take earth. So you can go fire and air, or fire and earth, or air and water. You have a lot of flexibility, but again, you can't do the opposite elements. Now, that's one of the reasons why Sorcerer is really powerful, especially in the early game, because you can bump up your caster levels really quickly. And so even though I'm a level 7 Sorcerer, I currently cast Fireball as not a 7th level or an 8th level or a 9th level, but a 10th level because I have 3 of these cores. So if I'm going up against a wizard or playing with a wizard of the same scale, my spells are just inherently 50% more powerful than theirs because I'm casting my spells at a higher level than they are, because I get this verbate, like just by playing a sorcerer and picking up these elemental trees. But the elemental trees do more than just that. They give you spell critical, they give you like resistances, the ability to bypass resistance of that type of element. They usually have special abilities, though I will say they're pretty much all exclusively bad. The only one that's not extremely bad is this one called Wind Dance, which lets you dash through the air, which is very convenient and very fast. They all have their own spell-like abilities, so in this case you're going to be picking up Burning Hands, Scorch, and Fireball. They all give you the ability to bypass the immunity of elemental damage on enemies, which is extremely useful. The reason why we go double elemental here is sometimes when you're playing with a fire character, there's monsters immune to fire, like fire elementals. They're literally made of fire. You can't damage them with that. But Air Savant allows you to cast lightning spells to damage those fire elementals. Well, sometimes there might be a really big monster that you want to bypass the immunity of, and this lets you do that. With Awakened Elemental Weakness, you can bypass the immunity of any type of elemental spell monster, so you can go like, oh, you're a fire elemental made of pure fire, guess what? You're taking fire damage anyway. Or if they're not immune, you can just increase the damage they take, which is very, very convenient. However, all of this pales in comparison in front of the reason why sorcerers are some of the best spellcasters in the entire game. And the reason for that is Elemental Apotheosis, where you can entirely turn yourself into an elemental. The big capstone, which you get, that allows you to ignore many different things. One of the main things is immunities. Once you turn into an elemental, either a fire or a air or a earth or whatever tree you end up using, you ignore all spell immunities of that spell type, which means once you get Fire Savant maxed out, you don't need any Air Savant. Those lightning spells are useless to you because you're Lava Lord. You're shooting fire everywhere. You don't care. What's that? Fire Elemental, demons, devils, all things that are immune to fire. You don't care. You just blast them anyway. And it's one of the reasons why sorcerers are extremely powerful and versatile at the end game, because there's monsters of all sorts of different types all over Dungeons & Dragons Online. And being able to just walk into an adventure and say, oh, by the way, all of you are dead is extremely useful. And it's one of the reasons why Sorcerer has been kind of like a cornerstone of endgame caster play, just because they get to do something that not every class can do. Now, outside of that, Sorcerer also has the Eldritch Knight tree, which is a melee tree, so you can focus on kind of like melee magic. You imbue your sword with elemental damage, and then when you hit monsters, it deals a whole bunch of extra damage to them. I actually love Eldritch Knight personally. It's one of my favorite enhancement trees in the entire game, and I have many, many Eldritch Knights, so I've played this on so many occasions. In fact, if you want to play one, in the beginner basics build guides, there is a link to some Eldritch Knight stuff, so if you think that's cool, please take a look. That being said, as a beginner, to get started, it's not as easy as the regular fire stuff, and I think you should get used to it. And then, of course, with this character, we take the Dragonborn here. Dragonborn gives access to Dragon Breath, which is an extra spell-like ability, so you can breathe on people and do a whole bunch of damage. But more importantly, you actually get one of this ability right here, the Draconic Knowledge, and this is one of the best points in any enhancement tree for any spellcaster in the entire game. And it's one of the reasons why pretty much every DPS spellcaster will play a Dragonborn regardless, because they get to bump up the maximum caster level of each individual spell type. So if you're a Black Dragon, it's acid spells, lightning spells or electric spells, fire spells, or cold spells, which makes Dragonborn's primo target and one of the reasons why you're going to be playing it on this character, on top of picking up extra spell DCs and other things that make Dragonborns oh so powerful in this regard. Now let's talk about some of the things you might need on your adventure, because you're going out there casting spells, but you probably need a couple things along the way. So if you want to get some extra materials and supplies, first you're going to want to head into the marketplace, as there's a lot of cool things you can buy in the marketplace that can help you on your journey. One of the things you're going to need is spell components. As not every sorcerer spell has a spell component, you'll be able to read it here. So for example, Burning Hands, if it says components somatic and verbal, there's no material component, but Jump, by contrast, says you need fine sand. So you need to make sure you actually have some material components. You buy your material components from the arcane reagent vendor. The level 1 to 3 vendor is here in the marketplace. You can see the spells are right here, or the components are here, so you can buy them. And you go into some of the dragon marked houses like House Fjarlin or House Tarasco, or any of the expansion areas will all have vendors that will trade you with the higher level spell components. One trick that you can do is that for sorcerers especially, they cast spells very, very quickly, and as a result, you actually go through your components a lot faster than you would on a wizard or another character. And since that's the case, what I like to do is I like to take my spell components, so like here they are, I like to put them on my action bar so I can actually see them go down, because I'm going to be casting a lot of fireballs, and every fireball costs 1 of these. So to make sure I don't accidentally run out and then go to press it and it goes, oh sorry, you need spell components, I put this on the action bar, so every time I look down on my action bar, I can see my components and I go, oh, okay, I need to buy some more soon. I only have 87, I gotta go back to the store. They're trivial, they don't cost you anything, it's just very important to make sure you have them stocked up. Next to that, we have the potion vendor. The potion vendor will sell you all sorts of useful potions. Specifically, I'm talking about the cure potions like Cure Light and Cure Moderate Wounds, as well as the kind of cleansing potions, curse removal, disease removal, I believe blindness removal is in here, and then lesser restoration in case you get like some type of negative effect on you, like a strength drain or something like that, or you're missing some stats because a monster tries to like poisons you. But on top of that, you can also get some buffing potions like Eagle Splendor, a potion that raises your charisma, making your spells more difficult to resist. This potion doesn't stack with charisma items of the same type, but when you're level 1, 2, 3, you don't have any charisma items, and so having a Eagle Splendor potion can be nice to help bump up your spells just a little bit. But we're not done. There's also the wand vendor who you can go to. The wand vendor will be able to sell you the different types of wands, specifically like the cure wands or an Eagle Splendor wand that we already talked about. But one of the reasons why the wand vendor is actually quite nice is because these wands can be used on other people. So while you do have to make a use magic device check with your type of character, because you're charisma based, you have a lot of use magic device. And while this is worse than just drinking potions for yourself, it can be better for healing other people. So if you happen to be in a group and somebody goes unconscious, you can quickly wand whip them and then they get back up. Whereas if you have a potion, you unfortunately can't pour a potion into somebody's mouth. All right, and let's go over some tips and combat tricks for playing as a sorcerer. One of the first things is that your spell-like abilities are extremely essential to your success. You want to make sure you are always using the spell-like abilities to the best of your ability. Now, because spell-like abilities don't actually increase in cost, you want to turn on all your meta magic feats to be able to use them. The problem with doing this is that, unfortunately, while it doesn't raise the cost of these ones, it does raise the cost of your regular spells. So the solution is, instead of turning on your meta magic feats, you can actually right-click an individual spell and just say, hey, turn on Empower, turn on Maximize, and turn on Quicken. That way, this spell still costs 2, this spell still costs 4, but this one has all the meta magic feats applied. And this is important because you'll actually be able to see the damage once we get into combat. So if I enter up here, there are several monsters. And if I cast the Burning Hand spell, the Burning Hand spell is currently not doing anything. Oh, good lag. Anyway, the Burning Hand spell does like 40 to 50 damage there, whereas the Burning Hand spell-like ability is doing like 70. So it's doing a lot more damage from the spell-like ability, and it also costs less, which can be nice. So if I burn this guy, it's doing like closer to 100, whereas if again I go back to the regular spell, I miss because they weren't close enough. It's doing like, yeah, 30 to 40, whereas this is doing, you know, upwards of 200 with the actual empowered and maximized spell-like ability. So when you're using your spell-like abilities, it's really, really good to always make sure that you are right-clicking them and turning all your meta magics, since they are very, very cheap. Now, one of the things that matters a lot when it comes to understanding how to use your spells is also understanding how they function. So like the angles, for example, like I have Lightning Bolt here. Lightning Bolt is not a Burning Hands where it's a cone in front of me. Instead, I choose a target, and so I click on this guy, I target him, and then I cast my Lightning Bolt, and it goes all the way down and it blasts them. But it hits everything along the way. So if I have these 3 kobolds running at me, they're kind of not standing in a line, but if I have these 3 kobolds here, I can cast this one spell, and then I somehow didn't hit the one I was aiming at. This spell can be really finicky, especially when there's sometimes some lag going on in DDO. You know how it is. You can usually hit enemies in a line. Kobolds are actually a bad example to pick this for, because kobolds unfortunately are really short, and so the line will trend downwards most of the time. So what you want to do is usually bigger creatures like giants, or even humanoids like hobgoblins and humans that are center of gravity is around yours and are going in a straight line a little bit better, are usually easier to hit when you line them up. But also, sometimes you want to do something that I like to call ground targeting. And this is relevant because of the jump spell. So the jump spell allows you to jump up in the air, and if you're above a target, they can't actually hit you. Casters will jump all the time. Additionally, whenever you cast a spell, it actually slows your movement speed. We can see that here, where my movement speed is 99%, but if I go to cast a spell, I lose half of my movement speed. I move at half speed while casting a spell. But if I'm jumping, my speed doesn't change. I get to stay at full speed because I'm in the air, and the monsters can't do anything to me. So jump casting is very common, and so oftentimes you will also want to ground target. Ground target is basically not targeting a monster, but targeting a specific area so you can hit a spell better. And there's a big reason why you should do this, and that's mana conservation. So for example, let's say there's a kobold, this vase is a kobold, and this barrel is a kobold. What I could do is I could target just this vase with a fireball, and then I could target just this barrel with a fireball. It would spend 2 fireballs, but I'd be able to kill them both. One there, and then one here. But I can ground target. I can just go pull my cursor, look at this, throw a fireball, and I hit them both. I highly recommend you guys learn to ground target, because instead of casting like 5 fireballs at the same time, so I cast a fireball here, and then I got a fireball this guy, so I gotta cast one over here, and you're casting a fireball on individual monsters, that's how you run out of spell points really, really quickly. Instead, what you want to do is you want to gather all the monsters, and then you want to ground target. So get used to using the mouse look mode, wait for all of the monsters to kind of gather up together, and then once they're together, again, I can jump over top of them, we ground target, throw the fireball straight down, and everybody dies. This means I can get through rooms while using only one spell, and I don't have to worry about nearly as many spell point costs as I'm going through this. So I can go whoosh, kill everything in one hit, and I'm a happy camper. Now, another thing that's really important with the mobility is also getting out of the way of enemies. So that's where we go to the option setting, you go into gameplay, and you want to turn on experimental tumble controls. This will make it so that when you press the block button while moving, which is shift by default, your character will do a tumble and you will roll. Why you want to roll is because tumbling actually increases your dodge chance, as my dodge is 0%. If an enemy hits me, I can't dodge the attack. But while tumbling, your dodge counts as 95%. It's basically a dodge roll like from Dark Souls or a game like that. So if I open this door and there's a bunch of kobolds attacking me, if they attack, they're going to basically hit me every single time. But if I dodge roll, you see the dodge number comes up. So while I'm dodging, I'm actually not going to be able to get hit. So again, that's one of the things you want to be doing, is using your dodge rolls when you can. And these little green pips down here are your cooldowns. Now, something also to keep in mind is that your spell points do not regenerate. You get your spell points back by using a shrine. So you have to make sure you are shrining in your adventures to get your points back. Your spells, if you're playing a wizard or a druid or a cleric, you can change your spells at a shrine, but as a sorcerer, you cannot do that. You are limited to the spells that you picked during the level up process for what you can decide to change out. Now let's go over the stats that you need for your character. What sort of things should you be looking for on equipment and items as you're playing the game? Number 1 is robes. Unfortunately, your character is not capable of wearing armor. You can get armor proficiencies from Eldritch Knight, and when you get into epics, you'll be able to do that because of the way I have the tree set up. But right now, your character will just be able to use robes. So look for any type of cloth robe that gives you bonuses and stats that you can possibly need. If you do decide to put on armor early, just bear in mind you're not proficient, so you don't get any bonuses from it. And on top of that, if you do put on armor, you start to suffer an arcane spell failure chance because you cast arcane spells, which means sometimes you cast a spell and nothing happens. So just be mindful of that. On gear, specifically, you're looking for items that give you charisma, items that give you constitution, items that give you hit points, items that give you spell points. Spell point items in particular are really nice because as a sorcerer, you get double the spell points from a spell point item. So if you find something that gives you 100 spell points, it actually gives you 200. That's just the way that sorcerers work. It's pretty nice for that. You also want spell powers. So for this character, you want fire and electric spell power, which you're going to generally find on weapons. When it comes to weapons, weapon stats. If it says on an attack, it doesn't affect you. So for example, the starter quarterstaff has shock on it, which says a shock weapon deals extra electric damage on a successful hit. You don't hit, you're not striking with your weapon. Well, probably like level 1, 2, and 3 you'll probably be striking with your weapon a little bit, because spellcasters are really bad in the early game. But once you start to get your spell like abilities online, you're never really going to use a like this type of thing. You're never going to use that. So these stats don't matter. If it says on weapon hit, you just don't care. Those stats don't affect you. You're looking for spell power stats. So this is one of the reasons why quarterstaffs are traditionally very bad for spellcasters, because they only give you 2 stats, whereas a regular weapon would give me 2 stats and another weapon gives me 2 stats, and I can just dual wield them, or you can use a weapon in one hand and an orb in the other hand. So most of the time you'll actually see like sorcerers, you'll see them walking around with like a bastard sword in their main hand and like a warhammer in their offhand, and that's just because those give them spell stats and they don't care about what the weapons are, because they don't need to hit with them. Proficiency doesn't really matter. You just need to put stuff that gives you the stats that you actually need. Anything that boosts your saving throw can also be pretty nice, so you want to focus on that. Anything that gives you bonuses to your physical or magical resistance ratings can also be pretty good. And then also the appropriate spell crits are also good. And then lastly, things that give you bonuses to your defenses in other ways. So stuff like gives you concealment or dodge can be pretty nice to be able to keep yourself alive a little bit better. But in that, it's pretty straightforward. Charisma, constitution, hit points, spell powers, spell points, and then your resistances, and then other than that, oh, and then bonuses to your spells, spell schools. No, I don't want to join a guild. Bonuses to your spell schools. So I'm talking about like bonuses to evocation is pretty much the main one, is what you're going to be looking for. On gear, I believe it's called blasting is the stat. So like you can find like blasting goggles as an example that will give you a bonus to your evocation DCs. All right, and last thing here, we're going to be talking about the Dragonborn. This is the written version. So we have the beginner sorcerer. Your stats, like I mentioned, you're starting with like 12 in the strength, like 14 or 16 in the con, 12 intelligence, and the max of charisma, because charisma is your main stat. You need it to cast all your spells. Skills, spellcraft, tumble, use magic device. For your spells, or for your feats, you're taking all of the spell feats, and then toughness, and then more spell feats. It's all about spell feats and spell damage. That's pretty much all we do here. When it comes to the spell list, and this is the order that I recommend you take it, you'll notice that the first spell in each level is damage, spell, damage, 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 and then later on it's utility, 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 utility. So take the damage spells first, take the utility spells later. You'll be happy with that. As far as the leveling guide, don't worry about these numbers. It's because I have to do some wacky stuff to get it to fit into the builder. But basically, you level up Fire Savant to get Burning Hands, you go Air Savant to get Shocking Grasp, you have your spell-like abilities, and you get the power for them. Then you get your Dragonborn Dragon Breath, then you go all in on Fire, a little bit more Lightning, get some more Dragonborn, and kind of finish off. And then once you get to level 20, because you don't want the Air Savant, you want to change up your spell list, you're going to swap it out so you have maxing out Dragonborn, getting all the really, really disgusting stuff. You want the Fire Savant to get the Elemental Apotheosis, so you can turn into an Elemental, and then Eldritch Knight to give you a huge amount of defense and the ability to wear armor, which becomes much more relevant when you get to the higher levels. And then as far as Epic Destinies go, if you haven't seen that video, I do have a video about Epic Destinies as part of Beginner Basics, but we go Draconic Incarnation to give a increase to our regular power. We're going all in on red, so all red dragon, you're a red Dragonborn already, so why not we go from there? Then you go Primal Avatar, which also gives you a whole bunch of spell points and the ability to heal as well. So this means you don't have to worry nearly as much about casting your spells and running out of spell points, but you'll also get some healing, which is convenient. In the heroics, it's not too bad to drink potions, but when you get to higher levels, when you have like 1,000 or 2,000 hit points, you really don't want to drink potions anymore. So being able to cast cures as well as Unyielding Sentinel, which gives you more healing effects, being able to restore your health is extremely important and something I highly recommend when you're playing a character like this. And that's it. That's all I have for Beginner Basic Sorcerer. Sorcerer is one of my favorite classes in the entire game. I absolutely adore this character class. Huge fan. I've just been playing Sorcerers forever and ever. I've played all the different savants. I've played melee. I've played ranged. I've played so many types of Sorcerer. I can highly, highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite character classes to play. So if you want to give it a shot, please follow the build guide below and get started. And you might be sitting here being like, Strimtom, okay, I tried the Sorcerer. I didn't love it. What else do you got? Well, you're in luck. Also in the description of this video is a playlist to the rest of the beginner basics. You might find another class that you enjoy a lot more. So make sure you check it out as you might find something that fits a little bit more with your playstyle. But that's all for me. So thank you all for watching. We had a fantastic time. If you liked what you saw, follow the channel for more beginner basics and some other associated videos. And I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.